Welcome to the Custodial Support Forum, where each episode we discuss issues related to one of the largest problems in America, child support. Hi, my name is Kai Patterson, and I'm your host. In this episode, we'll discuss issues related to non-custodial parents with child support warrants. And we're going to talk to a fugitive recovery agent, yes, a bounty hunter, who hunts down and apprehends individuals with child support warrants.
Are you owed child support?
Does the non-custodial parent of your children avoid your calls, hide their income and assets, or has relocated to prevent paying child support?
The Custodial Support Foundation provides you with the services to begin receiving the child support your children need.
Call 855-851-HELP now to receive the help your children deserve.
We're discussing issues related to non-custodial parents with child support warrants. To discuss this topic, we have Alexandra Stremler, who's a family law attorney with more than 19 years' experience in child support-related issues. We have Antoinette Dismukes, a custodial parent who's owed more than $62,000 in child support arrears. And we have Carl Ryans, a licensed fugitive recovery agent with more than 11 years' experience in hunting down and apprehending individuals with warrants. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks, Guy.
Okay, we're discussing issues related to non-custodial parents with child support warrants. Antoinette, it's my understanding that at one time the non-custodial parent of your child had an arrest warrant. What happened?
Nothing.
What do you mean nothing?
Nothing at all. I actually received the notice in the mail and called him and told him, do you know you have a warrant?
So you received the notice that he had an arrest warrant?
Correct.
And
I called him and I said, do you know you have a warrant? He said, no. I said, well, you do.
Really?
Yes. And I said, I gave them your information to make sure that they sent it to the right place because, you know, he has some issues with mail. However, there was nothing ever done. He was never picked up.
Okay,
and he had a warrant for over, I would say, at least about 6 months to a year. And that's not something, the funny thing is that he's not an individual he's not a criminal.
Okay.
He's a middle-class working man.
Okay.
No records, no mischief. So he's not your typical individual that you would pick up. Okay. You understand? He's not going to get in trouble.
But during that time, you were still accumulating arrears.
Yes, I was.
Wow. See, that's something we want to talk about. Alex, how does a warrant get issued, and why does it get issued?
Well, basically, there's provisions in child support law that it's called an order. Once you have a child support order, it's what triggers the arrears starting to go.
Okay.
And if there's failure to pay the order, and he still refuses to pay, and it varies by state, the length of time that they'll let a non-payment go.
Okay.
And what they can do is issue a warrant. What a warrant is simply, it's a vehicle for which an individual can get arrested.
Okay.
The other way a warrant can be issued is if there's a non-appearance by a non-custodial parent, and then the judge can issue a warrant. And it's called a bench warrant. It's the same thing as a warrant in effect. It's just called a bench warrant because the judge says, I'm issuing a warrant for his arrest.
Right.
But it's a vehicle for arrest in order to encourage, for lack of a better word, the non-custodial parent to pay.
But, I mean, typically when a person hears that they have a bench warrant, I don't think that's going to encourage them to go in and say, hey, here I am. I think the mindset of the average person, when they say bench warrant, all they hear is warrant.
Right, exactly.
And they're not coming anywhere near a family law building, court building, municipal voluntarily.
Unless they just want to go and satisfy their arrears, which is probably what it was intended to do. The warrants were probably, intended to induce a non-custodial parent to want to pay. I mean, has that been your experience?
Well, I'll say warrants are most frequently executed now when someone gets pulled for a traffic stop, or someone has some unrelated criminal, or even quasi-criminal, or even a civil suit. Anytime that there's some kind of altercation, this comes popping up, and that's when people will typically be
but
told.
when you have an individual who is not mischievous, he's not a criminal, he doesn't drive, so there's no way that this individual is going to get picked up.
You can go years.
Parent. You can go years with a bench warrant or warrant, and nothing ever happens. The bottom line is that the arrears are accruing, and you're still not receiving any child support. You have a bench warrant and nothing happens.
Right, we're not talking about a warrant for tickets where,
No,
we're talking
we're
a
talking
child
about-
is at the end of
Exactly.
so I understand
Exactly.
where you're coming from.
No, and I think it's a common feeling among many custodial parents
Right.
that, yeah, I got this warrant, but for practical purposes, sometimes it's not worth the piece of paper it's written on, although it has legal force and effect.
And that was my case.
It's
It
just
wasn't
not
worth the paper it
enforced.
was written on.
Wow, and that's sad because, again, there's a child at the end of this. Now, there are some instances where custodial parents don't want the non-custodial parent to have a warrant.
Exactly. And, in all fairness, because I could have easily ignited a situation that trigger him and have the cops come and have him locked up or what have you.
Okay.
But because, we have an amicable relationship in some areas, and
Okay.
my son still have a very good relationship
Even
with
though
him.
$62,000 in arrears?
You have to try to keep things separate. You have
Okay.
money, and then you
Alright.
have parenting. You have the relationship,
Okay.
and because he does have a relationship with our son, and sees him quite frequently because we have an open door policy where that's concerned. To have him locked up is still something that I would have to explain to my son as to
Okay.
why his dad is locked up. So. Even though there's a level of urgency because you need that support, you have to look at it from all aspects to say, do I really want him to get locked up? And then if he gets locked up, how am I going to get my support at the same time? So you're looking at relationship, you're looking at, well, if he gets locked up, in your mind, there's no way you're going to get your money with him being locked up.
Not necessarily, Alex, because a lot of
But that's the
individuals...
mindset of a typical custodial parent.
Correct, because an individual can be apprehended and they'll let him out on work release, correct?
The
Okay.
work release project is great because they are out working during the day, which means they're garnished, their wages will be garnished, there will be some incoming child support, which is usually put towards current payments first, as I'm sure you're aware. I would say my experience has been with most non-custodial payments of arrears,
Okay.
just the idea that you have a warrant, and if some authority says, okay, end of the line, those orange suits do wonderful things. Most folks, I would say, or many of those non-custodial parents will suddenly find a long-lost uncle, aunt, relative, friend.
They'll find money, is
They'll
what you're
find the
saying.
money because they want to go
Gotcha.
home that night.
Carl, you're a fugitive recovery agent, right? You're licensed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can a fugitive recovery agent be used, or can you as a fugitive recovery agent apprehend an individual with a child support warrant?
Well, a custodial parent can.
I mean, a non-custodial
Yeah.
parent.
Well, we can, but the custodial parent has to have that warrant has to
Correct.
be issued.
Okay,
and-
well, let's assume that there's a warrant. You can apprehend anybody, correct?
exactly with the
So,
warrant.
anybody with a warrant.
Yes.
You just have to be able to get paid for doing it.
Exactly.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that later on. Because if you're saying that law enforcement agencies don't, are you saying that no law enforcement agency
I am
acted?
saying that there was no action. There was no action. And in a municipality that I live in, you would think that there would be some action. And there was none.
Well, I
So-
think that there's one thing we have to be real careful about.
Okay.
I think given the resources
Yeah.
that law enforcement has, and given the important crimes that they have going on,
You mean the limited resources that they have?
right, they have very
Okay.
limited resources.
Okay.
I think that you have to make a
custodial
distinction
parent
between,
doesn't have no interest in that because
I'm saying this because this is the reality.
Reality. Yeah.
And I think, whether or not a custodial parent understands, thinks it's fair, of course it's not fair, but the reality is,
They're inundated.
right, that they're swamped. And if they could probably make full shifts out of picking up parents who aren't paying their child support. But unfortunately, they've got other issues they need to deal with, which is the reason that also private
And
recovery
that's the
agents.
reason why you have so many non-custodial parents walking around with bench warrants,
Millions.
just walking around la-di-da, and nothing is happening, and the custodial parent is struggling to take care of their child with no assistance.
What about non-custodial parents that are apprehended in other states where there's a warrant? Most states don't extradite, especially if it's not a neighboring state. It's my understanding for child support. So I've heard where a lot of non-custodial parents have just been released because the states won't pay the money to extradite. That clearly doesn't help a custodial parent, even if they are apprehended when the non-custodial parent's in another state. I mean, I see that as a huge problem. And that's why we want to talk about fugitive recovery agents, because it's my understanding as a fugitive recovery agent, you can apprehend somebody anywhere.
Yes.
That's something a custodial parent needs to know.
Okay.
How does that connect? Because if the, sheriff department or whomever responsibility it is to do that, and they're over-inundated with workload and other crimes, and it takes its priority, then how does the custodial parent get the information that a bounty hunter can actually act on that?
Well, you can actually go to another state and apprehend somebody in another state.
Yeah, we can do the extradition ourselves.
And
Wow.
the thing is, the custodial parent,
Okay.
the way you can find out if there's a warrant, you can just go to the court and get a copy of the file. They'll have it, all of
she
them.
said child support. She was
No,
notified.
No,
She
the
said
thing
she-
is, I
No,
know
she was
there
asking
a
how you can
warrant.
find
I
out if
know-
you need to.
No.
We know she was
no,
notified.
No. My question was in relation to the bounty hunter. And there is another entity that can follow up on that warrant. How can there be a connection made to the custodial parent
We're
to
gonna
let
talk
them
about
know
that.
about that
Okay.
level of service that's out there?
Yeah.
Because that would, help a lot.
Well, we're going to talk about that in the second part of this episode.
Okay.
And we want you to stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to actually discuss what's needed for a fugitive recovery agent to go out and apprehend a non-custodial parent with a child support warrant.